Alright, so this was one of the last ones that I hadn't seen. Freddy vs. Jason is technically the last Friday the 13th movie I have not seen. I've seen the remake, but it's been a few years and I want to rewatch it again. So, going into this one, I didn't know a lot about Freddy Krueger. I hadn't seen all of the movies. I have seen the first one, at least. So, I didn't do the research to find out where this movie takes place canonically in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. However, I did find out that this movie takes place right after Jason Goes to Hell. This takes place before Jason X, even though Jason X came out first theatrically. And so I knew he was going to survive. I knew Jason Voorhees would survive this one, which is something you expect in this franchise. They always survive. So going into this one, after seeing Freddy Krueger in at least one movie, I knew you have two very interesting characters, presumably being pitted against each other in some form or fashion into this movie. And I gotta say, the opening was really strong. You have Freddy Krueger basically monologuing his plan, essentially. And it's just interesting the way it's happening. And the way this story sort of unravels. I found this sequel to be one of the most interesting Friday the 13th sequels in the entire franchise. I found it more entertaining. I found it exciting. I found myself rooting for our main characters, which were more memorable in this sequel than most of the surviving characters are in a majority of the other sequels for Friday the 13th. Most of the characters are either throwaway characters, or they don't come back, or they're randomly recasted after some giant time jump or whatever. So I just found most of the characters, for the most part, likable in this one. Plus, with Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees being the looming threats for this film, you always have a sense of excitement with this movie, knowing what's coming around the corner. And so I would imagine the way that the survivors from the Freddy Krueger attacks, I assume if I had seen all of the Friday or all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, or at least seen whichever ones take place before this one, I'm sure I would be a lot more caught up with the story, but because I didn't, it was still easy to follow with this one. You have a couple of characters who are in a psych ward who witnessed a Freddy Krueger attack from the past, and they're basically in the psych ward because they know about him. So you get the sense the town, the adults in this town, are covering up everything about Freddy Krueger. And when it comes to Jason Voorhees, these characters, like most of the characters in the previous sequels, are just trying to move on from Jason Voorhees. You know, he's dead again. They don't expect to come back, so they're trying to just forget about him. But they can't do that. Freddy Krueger is back, and Jason Voorhees is back. And they don't really understand at first that they're really on the same side, which doesn't last long because hence the name of the movie. But the fact that Freddy Krueger is sort of using Jason to go after his targets is such an interesting role for both the characters in this movie. It kind of makes Freddy Krueger this puppet master, as he's really the smarter character. And he kind of needs to have the plan because he's, by default, the character that speaks. Jason Voorhees doesn't. So there's exposition from his point of view that we're just not going to get because that's the kind of character he is. He's the attack dog, essentially, in this movie. And that's sort of what he's done majority of the time. Is he just kills randomly. You know, whenever he's near Camp Crystal Lake, he just looks at the choices of victims and just goes after them one at a time. That's really how it's always been. And so for him to be pointed in a certain direction in this movie makes it interesting because his kills are very targeted now. So it's not so random as it was before. And as they start figuring out Freddy Krueger is involved, you just get the sense that you almost feel like there's this helplessness because of how Freddy Krueger attacks. And so it just sort of ramps everything up as we're going toward this finale, where the characters find out, hey, Jason is being used by Freddy, and we find out that Freddy can't really keep a leash on Jason the way he thought he could. And so the characters, our survivors, are figuring out, hey, let's turn them on each other. And so they have this really interesting plan that, as far as plot devices go in films, I thought it was very interesting how they went about this storyline, trying to pit the two of them against each other. So they trank Jason Voorhees, so he's basically fighting Freddy Krueger in his mind, while he's physically being taken to Camp Crystal Lake, where Laurie, one of our survivor characters, also falls asleep, so Freddy can attack her, so that when she wakes, she can bring him with him and bring him straight to Jason Voorhees, so that he can fight Jason, not in Jason's mind, but for real. And so there's a lot, you gotta suspend your disbelief with a lot of the stuff going on here. There's a lot of parts of the plot where you just have to accept, okay, I guess this is just what they're doing. But for someone who's a fan of these horror icons, to see them, or for someone who knows they're going to end up fighting, to see how it's happening, there's just a certain intensity as it builds toward those final moments. So, as I said, as their plan is to bring them face to face, that does ultimately happen toward the last third of the film. And we finally get them with a 1v1. And it's not anticlimactic. It's not just some quick thing. It's not over in just a minute. It kind of lasts a little while, which is something that I've been disappointed in the past, when you have certain rival characters come face to face and then it's like 30 seconds. That just disappoints me. And so the fact that that wasn't the case in this movie, I found it extremely entertaining, exciting. I was on the edge of my seat. I thought it was intense. I thought the story was good. The action was good. And it was pretty violent. Yes, obviously we got all the blood splatter, and some of it looks ridiculous, some of it doesn't, but the fact that the way characters are constantly getting cut and stabbed, especially between Freddy and Jason, it just made it more entertaining, I thought. It's sort of exactly what I wanted in a kind of slasher, and exactly what I wanted in this kind of a movie with these characters being pitted against each other. So I got the Scream Factory copy here. Here's the Blu-ray copy for Freddy vs. Jason. And you sort of get a little bit of glimpse on the back. So this is in this box set that I keep showing for these videos. This is really cool. This is this is every movie from Friday the 13th. And the artwork is just so freaking cool. And so to have them all is just really something that I'm very glad I have the set. I'm just very glad I have the set. I know Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X is on 4K, and the remake is also on 4K, which I do have that in my collection. And so I'm excited to sort of re-watch that remake so I can then review all of them and really have seen all of them for real. So this has become one of my favorite movie franchises, just especially investing so much time into watching all of these movies, because there's quite a bit. But I would say over some of the other franchises that I've seen, I would say this one's more entertaining than most of the others. I think there's fun to be had in this franchise. I think there's something worth seeing the sequels. I know some of them really aren't as great as some of the others, but for someone who's a completionist and can find something entertaining about really, or at least trying to find something entertaining about everything, I'm, for the majority, found something entertaining with every single one of these movies. So, I mean, I've seen quite a bit of these movies, and I just gotta say, it's just one of my favorites. I'm so glad I have this set. I'm so glad I've been watching them. I thought this movie was awesome. I really enjoyed this one. I liked it a lot. It was a lot of fun. It was beyond expectation. So, thank you for watching my review of it. Can't wait to finish out this franchise. Until next time, everyone.